You know, when you picture an exotic pet, you probably imagine this beautiful animal in a perfectly set up glass box. But owning one of these creatures, it's so much more than just food and water. You're really diving deep into biology, ethics, and believe it or not, even global ecology. So today, we're going to explore what it really means to go from being just a pet owner to being a true, responsible keeper.
It seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer, well, it gets to the absolute heart of this whole hobby. See, an owner, they might keep an animal alive. But a keeper works to help it thrive. They do this by understanding its world from the ground up, and also by understanding their own impact on the world. It's a huge shift from just having a pet to being its steward.
So here's the plan. We're going to start small, inside a tarantula's tank, and bust some common myths. Then we'll build that world from scratch and get into the whole debate about handling. After that, we're going to zoom way out and look at the massive global impact of another really popular pet. And we'll wrap up by talking about the legal maze of it all and defining what it truly means to be a responsible keeper.
Okay, let's jump right in with one of the most common gateway exotic pets out there, the tarantula. If you've ever even thought about getting one, you've probably been totally swamped with conflicting advice, especially when it comes to what's going on inside that tank.
Oh man, this one is probably the #1 cause of stress for new keepers. You read some care sheet online that says maintain 75% humidity. So you run out, you buy a cheap, usually wildly inaccurate gauge, and then you spend all your time panicking when the numbers don't line up. You end up turning the enclosure into a swamp, or worse, adding risky heat mats thinking you're doing the right thing. But honestly, in most cases, you're just creating a more dangerous environment.
And this quote from Tom's Big Spiders just absolutely nails it. These animals are incredible survivors. I mean, they've been around forever. The anxiety we feel trying to hit some perfect number on a dial is usually just wasted energy. The real key isn't obsessing over numbers, it's understanding how these animals take care of themselves out in the wild.
And this is exactly how we connect what happens in the wild to what we do in the enclosure. See, in nature, a tarantula isn't just sitting out in the sun when it gets hot. No way. It digs. It goes deep underground where the temperature and the humidity are way more stable. So we don't need dangerous heat lamps to copy that. We just need to give them the right setup, deep enough dirt to burrow in, and a simple water dish. Basically, if you're comfortable in the room, chances are they are too. So, if we're skipping all the fancy, often unnecessary gadgets, what is the most critical part of their home? Well, it's the very foundation of their world. It's the substrate. This is what lets them build their homes, control their own moisture levels, and feel safe and secure.
All right, let's break down the 3 most popular choices you're going to find. First up is cocoa fiber. It's a classic. It's great at resisting mold, but it can get a little too light and fluffy for good burrowing when it's dry. Then there's topsoil. It's super cheap and it packs down great, which is awesome for diggers, but you got to be careful to get the organic kind with no pesticides, and you might have to sift out little wood chips. And finally, peat moss. Also cheap, great for burrowing, but it can get really dusty and sometimes, it can get a little moldy. So each one has its pros and cons.
And here is the keeper's secret, the elegant solution. You don't have to pick just one. A lot of experienced keepers, like the guy behind Tom's Big Spiders, they just make their own mix. A 50-50 blend of cocoa fiber and peat moss, for example, it gives you that awesome mold resistance from the cocoa fiber and the great burrow-holding structure from the peat moss. It's a super practical fix that gives the animal the best of both worlds.
Okay, so we've built the perfect little world in a box. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room, or I guess the tarantula on our hand. The question of whether or not to handle your tea is easily one of the most heated debates in the entire hobby, and it really pits our human wants against the animal's basic nature. I mean, on one side, our reasons for wanting to handle them are totally understandable. We want to feel a connection, maybe prove to ourselves we're not afraid, or show our friends that these spiders aren't monsters. But then you have to look at it from the tarantula's perspective. They're not puppies, they don't have a concept of affection. For them, being picked up by a giant warm creature is probably terrifying. And for a heavy spider, a fall from even a couple of feet can literally kill them.
And this story, man, it's such a perfect, kind of chilling reminder of how unpredictable these animals are. The keeper had this tarantula for years, one that had never, ever been aggressive. He thought he knew her behavior, but in that split second, her wild instincts just took over. It wasn't malice, it was probably just a feeding response, but the result would have been a nasty bite. It's just a huge reminder that these are always fundamentally wild animals. So let's just quickly sum up the risks. A fall is very often fatal. A bite, even from a so-called docile species, is going to feel like getting stabbed with 2 big needles. Then you've got the barbed, irritating hairs they can kick, which can cause an insanely itchy rash for days. Get those in your eyes or breathe them in, and you're going straight to the ER. And for the old world species from Africa and Asia, they don't have the hairs, so their main defense is a bite with medically significant venom. The risks for both you and the spider are just not worth it.
So far, we've been really zoomed in on the tiny world of one pet in one home. Now, I want to pivot completely. Let's pull the camera way, way back and look at how the actions of individual pet owners can have massive, unintended consequences on a global scale. And we're going to do that by looking at one of the most common pets you could possibly find.
The red-eared slider. Come on, so many of us had one of these as a kid, right? You get them when they're the size of a 50-cent piece. They seem like the perfect, easy first pet. They're cute, they're quiet, they just hang out in their little tank with that plastic palm tree. I mean, what harm could they possibly do?
This is the harm. That cute little turtle is officially recognized as one of the 100 most destructive invasive species on the entire planet. It's up there with zebra mussels and kudzu. How in the world did that happen? Well, it happens when that cute little turtle grows up to be the size of a dinner plate, gets really messy, and the owner decides, I'll be nice and just release it into the local pond.
And this is what happens next. They're bigger, they're meaner, and they breed faster than our native turtles, so they just push them right out. They steal all the food, all the good sunning spots, they carry diseases, they basically just wreck the whole ecosystem. And because of these pet releases, these turtles, which are only native to the southern US, now have wild populations on every single continent except Antarctica. This is a global crisis that started one pet release at a time.
All this brings us to our last big picture topic. If these animals can be risky to us and to the environment, how are they regulated? Well, the answer, at least here in the United States, is it's a mess. There's no single, simple rulebook.
The legal system for this stuff is basically a patchwork quilt of different state and local laws. What is perfectly fine to own in one state could literally be a felony just one state over. These laws decide everything, which animals you can have, if you need a permit, what kind of cage they need, all of it.
And this chart just gives you a really stark visual of how fragmented it all is. I mean, look at this. A full 20 states have comprehensive bans on most exotic pets. Then you've got another big chunk with partial bans, another chunk that requires a special license, and then just a few states with almost no rules at all. The takeaway here is simple, but it's absolutely crucial. You cannot assume anything. Before you even think about getting an exotic pet, you have to become an expert on the laws for your city and your state.
So we've gone through the nitty-gritty of care, the ethics, the environmental impact, and the laws. We've seen just how deep this hobby goes. So let's bring it all home. Let's boil it all down into a simple code of conduct, a creed for anyone who wants to be more than just an owner, but a true keeper.
Okay, it really just comes down to these 4 pillars. Number 1, research deeply. And I mean go way beyond the basic care sheets. Understand where the animal comes from and what the real risks are. Number 2, prioritize the animal's welfare over your own wants. If it's a look but don't touch pet, respect that. Number 3, acknowledge your impact. This is the big one. Never, ever, ever release a pet into the wild. And finally, number 4, know the law. Seriously, ignorance is no excuse.
And that's the final thought I really want to leave you with. Your responsibility doesn't stop at the edge of that glass box. It extends to the safety of your family, the health of your local ecosystem, and your duty as a law-abiding citizen. Being a true keeper means seeing that whole big picture. So I'll ask you again, your pet's world might be a glass box, but where does your responsibility really end?